What's up, everybody? It's Yvonne with Trouts Fly Fishing. This is 5 Flies for September 2021. We're excited to welcome Bob Reece onto the show for this episode. We've had him a couple times now. Bob has a variety of flies that work for this time of year. We're talking hopper dropper fishing with him specifically for September. Obviously, blue wings, streamers, midges, remnant caddis are still playing a role this time of year, but you still have really good hopper dropper fishing. So we wanted to highlight that. So we chose some flies, and Bob Reece happens to tie up most of them that will work for hopper dropper fishing, whether you're fishing tailwaters or you're going up to the Colorado or something like that. So we're talking hopper droppers with Bob. Enjoy this episode. Obviously, I mentioned in the forecast last time that with the 5 Flies is going to change a little bit, less of an on the water element. We're going to go more to the studio element. This is by no means the final form, so stay tuned to the channel to see what 5 Flies does become. This is sort of like a little fill-in episode because I've been shooting on the water quite a bit. I got stuff with Tanner.
I got some shimmy sucky.
Stuff with Zeke.
We're gonna drink some super coffee.
Scott.
That center part, I'll be working a little bit to the left of that and gradually making my way across that water column.
A lot of exciting things. You're gonna see that come up on the YouTube channel over the next couple weeks. So on the water content's still in the mix, very much so, more so than it was in the past. So excited about that change. Obviously stay tuned to the YouTube channel for all that stuff. So without further ado, let's welcome Bob. And I apologize for the video quality, but the audio quality is there. So some good information. Bob and I talked about how to fish hopper droppers, what kind of rigs we like to use, what our distances between flies are, how we like to present that sort of stuff. So talked a lot more about how to use those flies and inspiration for some of his flies. So yeah, check it out. What's up, everybody? It's Yvonne with Trouts Fly Fishing, joined by our good friend, the handsomest Bob Reece.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
How you doing, Bob?
Man, I'm doing great. Loving this time of year. Temperatures, where I'm at in Wyoming, are starting to finally kind of drop. Nighttime temps are getting a little cooler. I'm getting super excited. I love this time of year. Kind of start to creep back onto maybe some of my favorite bigger waters and really get into that late summer, early fall dry dropper fishing that I really look forward to all year.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously this time of year we're going to start seeing blue wings playing a more major role. Like, midges are obviously going to be around year round, but I think a lot of people tend to get into a space where they might downsize too quick, right? They're going to get into the late fall, early winter sort of vibes, like the moment Labor Day comes. And I think, as you said, hopper dropper fishing can be super productive this time of year.
Absolutely, until, for me personally at least, I keep throwing big terrestrials, size 6s, size 4s, all the way up until we get a couple really good hard freezes in a row before I taper off of that. So it's a great way, especially on low, clear flows. I've had great success in the past where maybe it's a little too skinny. I don't want to throw like a big articulated streamer like we might think of in a fall. I use, big terrestrials the same kind of way to try to coax out those bigger fish.
For sure. And then you leave a little treat dangled off the back for the ones that...
Absolutely, man. A little size 18 307 or a baetis, something along those lines, yeah.
Exactly, cool. So obviously Bob's up in Wyoming. You guys have seen Bob in previous episodes of 5 Flies. So appreciate Bob dropping by for this little bit of a transitional 5 Flies as we move to the new format. This obviously is not going to be the new format going forward, but we still want to talk about flies and happy to have Bob on. So let's get to it. We're going to start, surprisingly enough, many of these flies are going to be Bob Reece flies.
What?
It's going to be the beefcake hopper in purple and in tan. Bob, can you talk to us about the beefcake hopper as a whole, and then when you like using those colors?
Yeah, so beefcake hopper as a whole I put together just as a really specific imitation, especially when fish have seen a lot of just general foamy, chubby Chernobyl imitations all season long. Something you can use a little bit later on when fish get a little pickier. I like the hook setup with the Tiemco 24.99 in the middle. It's got that nice big gap that sits right in the middle. Usually provides a nice hookup. It does ride a little bit lower intentionally in the water than maybe some of those other big foamy things that you fish, and that's intended to be a little more imitative of a natural, provide a little bit of a sense of vulnerability. Tan's always, obviously with hoppers, it's always a solid color. I do like the purple toward the back half of the season. I know in a lot of the areas where I fish, we get some pretty big cricket species that have that black and kind of purple coloration to them. And so that was always a color that I'd move to, especially into the early to mid weeks of September.
Cool. Do you play any, like, I know for me, with streamers, for example, like I'll do, I'll do black a lot, but generally I'll do black when it's overcast, darker flies when it's overcast, and lighter flies when it's a little bit sunnier. Do you prescribe to that at all with your hoppers?
Usually when it does get a little cloudy, I will shift to those like the black beetles or the purple hoppers that I fish. I do think it provides a little bit better of a silhouette when there's not that direct light. Not saying you can't, fish them on days where the light's sufficient and it's there for you, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, switch it up, try different things, whatever you got to do to get into the fish.
For sure. How's this float? I know how it floats, but can you tell the people how it floats?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an extended body hopper, so the foam kind of sticks off the butt in an extended fashion. And so it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna float kind of half in, half out the water. My motivation behind when I'm putting it together, like I said, was to create something where, if thinking of things like I always try to do from the perspective of a fish, if I've seen a few thousand chubbies and buoyant other foamy things float by and stick me in the face, and I look at those naturals when they float, they tend to be a little canted, maybe the back end's hanging down in the water just a little bit, and so it's designed to float like that. Still has a little piece of indicator foam on the top, so visibility is never going to be an issue. You're going to be able to see it just fine, but it's not going to ride right up on top like some of those other imitations, and that's been a good thing for me in the time that I've fished it.
For sure. I mean, that's exactly right. Like naturals don't float high, right? They're down. They're struggling.
They get stuck in the surface film, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah. What kind of weight can you throw off behind this? We're talking hopper droppers. Obviously we have some nymphs coming up a little on the smaller side. Can you throw bigger stuff under this?
So I usually don't go past like a size 14 at most on those. If it's a size 6, obviously I give you a little bit of play. But once again, with the way that I designed this for those lower late season clear water conditions where typically you're going to be fishing at 16, 18, 20 underneath it. So it's going to give you sufficient buoyancy for all that. But you're not going to probably be able to drop like a size 12 or a size 10 off of it if you're thinking about doing anything crazy like that.
Cool. What was your inspiration with this fly? Like, what did you feel like there was something missing in like the lineup of flies you were fishing? Like what went into the design of this?
So my motivation for this, actually, I was on one of my favorite pieces of water, and I'd taken a lunch break, and I watched a buddy, and then I watched 2 more strangers come through a run about this time of year, really good late season terrestrial fishing, and there were 2 big rainbows in the run, and I watched them fish chubbies and some other general hopper imitations, and I watched these fish refuse them, follow, drift, look, and refuse. And so throughout the whole next winter, coming back into the next year, my motivation was to try to bring in a hopper pattern that was a lot more natural, a lot more realistic, that it'd be accepted by them, and it worked out pretty well.
Nice. Cool. Well, that's the beefcake copper. That's the beefcake copper number 1. Fly number 1 is the purple 8. Fly number 2 is the tan 10. So now we're going to move to flies 3 and 4. .307 nymph, dark brown in 18, and then olive is in 16.
Nice.
Talks about the 307 nymph. When do you like to fish it? How deep do you like to fish it? All that sort of stuff.
So, I usually, like I said, this one actually, in terms of how I created it and when I put it together, was a pretty similar time frame with a pretty similar target in terms of the seasonal stuff throughout the year. The size 18, the little dark guys, I love to drift those, where a lot of our stuff our flows get low. This is a great example of it this year with some of the low snowpack that we've had. I'll take a big, size 6 hopper and drift that only 12 or 18 inches off the bottom, just kind of trying to pick apart those little riffles and little pockets. It's a general imitation with just a little bit of a flash to it for those little mayfly species that, like you said, will start to be the baetis and stuff popping up a little more regularly on the menu now. I also, with a little bit larger size 16 and the olive, I love swinging that fly, which I know is that might break outside of our dry dropper kind of trend that we're talking about now. But if you don't feel like dropping it, the swinging that through is really, really effective. That little bit of flash kind of speaks to some of the gas bubbles that can build up inside the exoskeleton, some late season caddis action in the fall as that kind of works its way through as well.
Yeah. Look, I like any fly that you can swing. Because, man, sometimes my drifts, I don't know about you, Bob, sometimes my drifts aren't perfect.
Sometimes it's a swing anyways.
If I get an accidental swing out of it,
that's right.
Yeah, I'll
honestly,
take everything I can get. So
that's right. Honestly, all you gotta do is get in the water, man. That's the most important part. Doesn't always have to be perfect.
Right. Get it in the water, Steve.
That's right.
You know who you are, Steve. Okay, yeah. So obviously, blueing olives. You're coming out. This can be fished as a hopper dropper. As the dropper, it can be fished in a traditional nymphing rig. With like a hopper dropper, if you're going to be dropping that off the back end of a beefcake hopper on the waters you fish, how deep are you going to run that this time of year?
So I'm gonna judge it. A lot of the stuff that I'll fish through that I do think sometimes gets neglected. Because we make that quick transition into fall, like a lot of times I think mentality-wise, maybe some people think, I got to get to the big deep pools and the fish are starting to move in there for the winter, and that's going to be the case eventually. But the best part about these few weeks of September as we ease into it is you can still really work those little troughs, those little buckets. If you get a 1.5 feet, 2 feet of water with just a little chop and break over the top of it, it's a great opportunity to, like I mentioned, put that fly on a dropper that's a foot to, 1.5 feet down. I really just work and pick that water apart. And if it's heavy enough, it's got the tungsten bead on it. If you do move up and you finally get to that pool or those rare pools this time of year that are deeper, you just extend the length of that dropper, down to maybe your standard 2.5 feet, and drop it right off the bottom and work through it. But it has the flexibility to be used in both of those situations.
Cool. Having tungsten obviously, will help it get down for those sort of small little pockets, little troughs and stuff like that. It also help it get down if you're fishing big rivers out of a boat. So
absolutely, man.
You're the Colorado, the Roaring Fork, both floatable this time of year here in Colorado, and our guy up in Frisco, Zeke, loves fishing a super long dropper. So he'll drop it down like 3-4 feet on some of those longer, big, deep runs where you're just sort of picking. You're trying to find fish that aren't necessarily as active. So like as we get into October, like late September, October. And then the final fly, we're going to throw a little love to Colorado's own. It's the Radiation Baetis in purple. It's the Shake Uncle pattern 18. Obviously, Baetis playing a role. What do you like about this fly, Bob?
So I love the profile of this fly, honestly. Super slim, really, really nice, natural appearance to it. And the purple, I think, is a great late season switch up. It goes dark, obviously, as it gets down in the water, but it's just maybe a color they haven't seen as much. We talked about the dry dropper situation. You could absolutely rig it up off of a beefcake hopper and work it through in a very similar fashion with all the other stuff that we've been talking about. But another thing that maybe is old school, or maybe gets overlooked, I guess, in some situations, is just putting it on a naked nymphing rig, just a nice long 13, 14, 15 foot leader in that really shallow water if you're doing some sight fishing or you're hunting down, tracking down fish for the day. That little tiny baetis pattern on that long naked leader is fantastic. A lot of times we get so caught up in it has to be under an indicator or it has to be under a dry dropper, which is great. But a lot of times, we get up on a nice fish in really shallow water and we maybe worry about that splash a little too close or near that fish. And so just take that dry off for that approach and set it up on a long leader and get after them that way. And a lot of times it's really effective.
Yeah. The other alternative to that would be like the short nymphing, like short leash nymphing game, where like you could throw it really shallow underneath a more buoyant like blueing eyelet or something like that, and just get a quick drift right past a fish that might be sitting in those shallows, moving back and forth.
Yeah, always a great option.
Actually, was in the canyon, Cheeseman Canyon with Scott Dixon last week, and ton of fish got really active in the middle of the day, like middle of the afternoon, where it started to get a little cloudy. You had fish rising to blue wings, but yeah, one of the things that he was picking fish off was throwing a small nymph right below a small dry, and radiation baetis would be a great option there, where you're sort of just trying to pick off those ones that you see like moving like in and out of their lane, right? So.
And sometimes in those situations too, I mean, I know the standard, we've talked kind of about the lengths of droppers, and you get typically like a standard like 2.5 feet, or maybe people will come up to, 1.5 feet or a foot. But in certain situations, kind of like you're talking about, if you're not getting a response, I mean, I've dropped, and you can drop stuff even as short as 6 inches below your dry, really for those fish that are kind of right there below the film work and stuff, and that can be a great change up.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, that's 5 flies for September. Bob, we appreciate you having me on. Where can people find you? I know you've been a busy guy.
I have. Although vanished a little bit this summer, kind of getting back into the swing of things. Instagram, you can find me at Thin Air Angler. Obviously, just search that out. That's there for a lot of fly time videos, and maybe a little life information on how to just be better at everything and anything that you do. I've got the guide operation, Thin Air Anglers at Torres Creek Ranch, and you can find that just by Googling Thin Air Anglers or thinairangler.com, and that'll give you that information as well.
Bob, Mr. Bobby Positivity over there.
Yeah, hey man, you get one life. You might as well be positive about it.
That's right. Follow Bob on Instagram, man. Every once in a while I'm sitting there, days beat me up a little bit, and I just watch a little Bob Reece give me some motivation. It's always a good thing, man. It always gets me in my right mind space. So Bob's more than just a talented fly tyer. He's just a good dude. President of the Good Dudes Club.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Of course. So we appreciate you, Bob. You can swing by the shop here in Denver, or go online, troutsflyfishing.com. So yeah, thanks a lot, Bob.
All right, have a good one.